Stop. Before you spend another old penny or nickel, check it one more time, because you could be holding a tiny piece of American history that collectors are hunting for right now. Hidden inside ordinary-looking wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, and World War II war nickels are dates, mint marks, surfaces, and rare characteristics that can completely change what a coin is worth. And today, on Hidden Coin Millions, I'm revealing 4 incredible coins that could make you look at your old change completely differently. One of them is a buffalo nickel from the 1920s. Another is a wheat penny from the 1930s, and we're ending with a Silver War nickel from the World War II era. But here's the shocking part. The final coin has a detail you absolutely cannot afford to overlook. So stay with me until the very end, because if one of these coins is hiding in your collection, you don't want to discover its importance after you've already spent it. First up, now we reach our first hidden treasure, and the date on this little piece of American history is 1956. At first glance, it may look like an ordinary old wheat penny, especially with its brown and black spots and circulated appearance. But this is exactly where collectors know they need to slow down and look carefully. The absence of a mint mark tells us this example was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and the 1956 Philadelphia issue had a very large production run, making the specific characteristics, preservation, appearance, and any genuine variety or unusual feature extremely important when determining collector interest. The coin itself carries the classic Lincoln wheat cent design created by Victor David Brenner. It is made primarily of copper, with the standard composition being 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, and it measures about 19 millimeters across and weighs approximately 3.11 grams. And now, look closely at that brown and black appearance. Those colors can immediately make a wheat penny stand out visually, but collectors should never assume that unusual color alone makes a coin rare. What matters is the complete combination of the date, mint mark, strike, surface preservation, originality, and any identifiable variety or error. That is where the real collector story begins. And here comes the moment you've been waiting for. Based on the value figure supplied for this exact described coin, the claimed market value is $74,600. That is an enormous figure for a single 1956 wheat penny, and it is precisely why a coin with this kind of claimed valuation should be authenticated and professionally evaluated before anyone treats that number as a guaranteed selling price. Current published references show that ordinary 1956 Philadelphia wheat cents can have dramatically different values depending on grade and condition, while exceptional certified examples have achieved very high auction prices. So if you ever come across a 1956 wheat penny without a mint mark, don't automatically throw it back into the change jar. Turn it over. Examine both sides. Look closely around the date, lettering, wheat ears, and surfaces. If something appears unusual, preserve the coin exactly as you found it, and have a reputable professional grading service or experienced numismatist examine it. Because sometimes the biggest mistake a collector can make is not failing to find a rare coin. It is finding something potentially important and spending it before discovering what it really is. And remember, Hidden Coin Millions is freshly updated every day, bringing you more fascinating American coins, hidden varieties, and collector discoveries. So keep checking those old pennies, because the next coin you pull from a collection, jar, roll, or pocket could be the one that makes you stop and say, "Wait, what did I just find?" Next up, now we move deeper into the hunt, and this time the date you need to remember is 1925. Take a close look at this buffalo nickel, because this is exactly the kind of old American coin that can make collectors stop, look twice, and wonder what history is sitting right in front of them. Imagine holding a coin that was already part of American life more than a century ago. This 1925 buffalo nickel, without a mint mark, carries the classic buffalo nickel design that has become one of the most recognizable images in American coin collecting. The coin shows the powerful Native American profile on the obverse and the American bison standing on the reverse. It isn't just an old nickel. It is a surviving piece of an era when American coinage looked completely different from what we see in our pockets today. And here's where the story becomes fascinating. A missing mint mark on a buffalo nickel does not automatically mean the coin is an error. For the 1925 issue, the Philadelphia Mint produced coins without a mint mark, while Denver and San Francisco examples carry their respective mint marks. That means when you see a 1925 buffalo nickel with no mint mark, you are looking at a Philadelphia issue, but the real collector excitement comes from examining the complete coin, including its condition, strike, surfaces, date visibility, and any genuine variety or unusual characteristic. The buffalo nickel itself was designed by James Earl Fraser and was introduced in the early 20th century. It was created during a period when American coin designers were bringing more realistic and distinctly American imagery onto circulating coins. Fraser's design became legendary because it placed Native American imagery and the American bison directly onto one of America's everyday 5-cent pieces. And think about that for a moment. This wasn't created as a museum object. It was made to circulate. It passed from hand to hand. It traveled through stores, businesses, pockets, cash registers, and countless ordinary transactions. Every scratch, every mark, every change in color tells part of the story of its journey through American history. The buffalo nickel was composed primarily of copper and nickel, with a standard composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel. That composition gave the coin its familiar nickel appearance when new, but decades of circulation and environmental exposure can dramatically change the surfaces. Your described example has a brown layer and a beautiful overall appearance, and you describe it as being in very fine condition. That condition matters enormously. Buffalo nickels are famous among collectors for one major challenge. The design contains high relief details that could wear down considerably during circulation. The Native Americans' hair and cheek details on the obverse can lose definition, while the buffalo's horn, shoulder, and other high points on the reverse can become weak with heavy use. The date can also become difficult to read on worn examples. So when you find an old buffalo nickel where the date remains clearly identifiable and the overall design still has strong visual character, you have something worth examining carefully. And this is where your 1925 example becomes especially interesting. The brown coloration should not automatically be interpreted as proof of extraordinary rarity. Natural toning, environmental exposure, handling, and surface changes can all affect a coin's appearance. Serious collectors look beyond color. They examine the entire surface, the sharpness of the design, the authenticity of the coin, the grade, and whether there is a legitimate variety or error that adds additional collector interest. That is why the smartest thing you can do with a potentially valuable buffalo nickel is slow down. Don't rub it. Don't polish it. Don't try to make the old surface look brand new. And definitely don't clean away the history that collectors may want to preserve. Instead, handle the coin carefully by its edges. Keep it in a safe holder designed for coins, and if the coin appears genuinely exceptional, consider professional authentication and grading. A certified grade can make a major difference when collectors are trying to establish exactly what they are looking at. Now comes the moment you've been waiting for. For the specific 1925 Buffalo nickel you described, with no mint mark, brown coloration, beautiful appearance, and very fine condition, the value figure you supplied is $160,500. Yes, $160,500. That is an extraordinary treasure-level figure for a single Buffalo nickel, and it is exactly the kind of number that makes a collector's heart start racing. But remember, that figure is the value you provided for this particular described example. Actual market prices depend heavily on authentication, precise grading, originality, variety, and documented sales. Published PCGS pricing for ordinary 1,925 Buffalo nickels demonstrates how dramatically values change with grade, which is why professional authentication is essential for a claim at this level. PCGS. And that is the lesson I want every collector watching Hidden Coin Millions to remember. Never judge an old coin only by its face value. Never assume an old nickel is worthless just because it looks worn. And never throw a Buffalo nickel back into circulation without examining the date, mint mark, surfaces, and condition. A coin like this can carry an incredible story. The 1925 date alone takes us back to an America that looked completely different from today. The Buffalo nickel design connects us to an important chapter in American coinage. And when a particular example combines an identifiable date, desirable condition, attractive surfaces, and potentially significant collector characteristics, that's when the hunt becomes serious. Collectors also need to understand something important about rarity. Rarity isn't simply about age. A coin can be old and still be relatively common. What creates serious collector demand is the combination of scarcity, condition, eye appeal, originality, demand, and sometimes a recognized error or variety. That means you should train your eyes. When you find a Buffalo nickel, look at the date first. Then inspect the mint mark area. Examine the lettering. Look at the buffalo's horn and shoulder. Study the Native American portrait. Check the surfaces under good lighting. And if something doesn't look ordinary, don't immediately assume it is damage or staining. Have it examined, because the difference between an ordinary old coin and a genuinely important collectible can sometimes come down to details that are almost invisible at first glance. And that's why I keep telling you to check those old coins. Your next discovery may not look spectacular when you first pick it up. It might be sitting quietly in an old collection. It might be hiding in a forgotten coin jar. It might be tucked away among other Buffalo nickels that nobody has examined carefully for years. The treasure hunt is about knowing what deserves a second look. So if you ever see the date 1925 on a Buffalo nickel without a mint mark, don't rush past it. Stop. Look closely. Protect it. Study it. And if the coin appears unusually strong or unusual for its age, get a qualified professional to evaluate it. Because sometimes the most exciting discoveries aren't the coins that scream for attention. Sometimes they're the quiet ones, the old ones, the overlooked ones, the coins sitting there while everyone else walks right past them. And this is exactly why Hidden Coin Millions is freshly updated every single day. We keep bringing you more fascinating American coins, more hidden possibilities, and more reasons to look twice before dismissing an old piece of change. So keep your eyes open, collectors. Next up, now collectors, get ready, because we are moving to coin number 3, and the date you need to remember is 1936. Look at this wheat penny carefully. No mint mark. A rich brown appearance. Brown dots visible on the reverse. A distinctive green dot that immediately catches the eye. A beautiful overall look. And you described this particular example as being in extra fine condition. At first glance, Somebody who doesn't understand old American coins might simply see an old penny. But that's exactly how hidden treasures remain hidden. The most important discoveries don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they sit quietly among ordinary coins, waiting for somebody to notice the date, inspect the surfaces, recognize the design, and understand why collectors pay such close attention to the smallest details. This is the 1936 Lincoln wheat penny, one of America's classic wheat cents from an era when the familiar Lincoln portrait appeared on the front, while two elegant wheat ears framed the reverse. And there is something fascinating about seeing this design today. This penny was created during a completely different chapter of American history. The United States was living through the difficult years of the 1930s, and ordinary coins were constantly moving through everyday American life. A little copper cent like this could pass through countless hands without anyone imagining that decades later, collectors would be studying surviving examples under magnification. The coin's original composition was primarily copper, with Lincoln wheat cents of this period struck from a bronze alloy consisting of approximately 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. And that copper composition is important when you're looking at an old wheat penny today. Over many decades, copper surfaces can change dramatically. A coin that once had a bright reddish appearance can develop brown coloration as the metal naturally changes over time. Environmental exposure can also create spots, discoloration, and other surface characteristics. That's why the brown appearance on this particular coin is something to observe, but not something to automatically treat as proof of rarity. The real excitement begins when you combine the appearance with the date, mint information, preservation, surface quality, and any genuine variety or error. Now let's talk about that missing mint mark. When you see a 1936 Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark, that generally indicates the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. PCGS identifies the 1936p issue as one of the more common dates in the series, with hundreds of millions struck. So don't make the mistake of thinking that every 1936 penny without a mint mark is automatically an ultra-rare coin. That isn't how serious collecting works. The real hunt is in the details. You want to examine the date. You want to examine Lincoln's portrait. You want to inspect the lettering. You want to study the wheat ears. You want to examine the reverse carefully. And you want to determine whether anything unusual is actually a mint-made feature rather than damage, staining, environmental discoloration, or post-mint alteration. That brings us to the brown dots you described on the reverse side. Those dots can certainly make the coin visually distinctive, but collectors need to determine exactly what caused them. Natural toning, oxidation, environmental exposure, contact marks, and other surface changes can produce unusual colors and spots. And that green dot? That's another detail that deserves careful examination rather than an instant assumption. A green spot on a copper coin can have many possible explanations, and without examining the actual coin under proper magnification, nobody should automatically call it a rare mint error. This is why professional authentication becomes so important when a coin is being presented with an extraordinary valuation. Because the difference between an interesting old wheat penny and a truly exceptional collectible can depend on details that are almost impossible to confirm from a simple description alone. Now, let's talk about condition. You describe this coin as extra fine. For a wheat penny that has survived since the 1930s, preservation matters. Extra fine condition generally means the coin has experienced circulation but retains substantial design detail. On a wheat cent, collectors pay attention to Lincoln's hair, cheek, jaw, lettering, date, and the reverse wheat ears and surrounding details. The stronger those details remain, the more interesting the coin can become. And remember something very important. Condition isn't simply about whether a coin looks shiny. In fact, a cleaned coin can sometimes be less desirable than an original coin with natural age and attractive surfaces. Collectors want originality. They want authenticity. They want a coin that tells its history without being artificially transformed. So if you discover an old wheat penny with unusual colors or surfaces, don't reach for a polishing cloth. Don't scrub it. Don't try to make it look brand new. You could permanently damage the surface and potentially destroy characteristics that a professional would want to examine. Instead, hold the coin by its edges, protect it from unnecessary handling, and get expert authentication if you believe you've found something extraordinary. And now, collectors, we've reached the moment you've been waiting for. For the specific 1936 wheat penny you described, no mint mark, brown coloration, brown dots on the reverse, a green dot, beautiful appearance, and extra fine condition. The value figure you supplied is $178,400. $178,400. That is an enormous treasure-level figure for a single penny. But here's the part every serious viewer should understand. That number is the value you provided for this specific described example. It should not be interpreted as the guaranteed current selling price of an ordinary 1,936 no mint mark wheat penny. Published market information shows ordinary 1,936 with P examples can be worth dramatically less, while exceptional certified examples can command much higher prices. Records a $19,200 auction result for an exceptionally graded 1,936 Lincoln cent, illustrating just how strongly grade and rarity can affect the market. And that is exactly why authentication matters. A number this large should never be accepted simply because somebody wrote it on a listing, video, post, or piece of paper. If you genuinely have a coin that appears to match a high-value description, get it professionally evaluated. Because the true treasure isn't just the number. The true treasure is knowing exactly what you have. And collectors, imagine the feeling of discovering an old wheat penny and realizing that the tiny details you've been ignoring for years may deserve a much closer look. That's the excitement behind collecting. It's not just about old metal. It's about history. It's about rarity. It's about preservation. It's about the possibility that something overlooked could turn out to be genuinely significant. So here's your collector tip for this coin. If you find a 1936 Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark, don't automatically assume you've discovered a fortune, but don't automatically dismiss it either. First, confirm the date. Then check the mint mark area. Next, examine both sides under good lighting. Look carefully at the lettering and the wheat ears. Study unusual spots or colors without touching or cleaning the surface. If you notice something genuinely unusual, photograph it clearly and have the coin examined by a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. That is how serious collectors hunt. They don't guess. They investigate. They don't destroy the evidence. They preserve it. And they don't let excitement replace authentication. Because when you're dealing with potentially valuable coins, knowledge is what turns excitement into a real discovery. The 1936 date takes us back nearly a century, and every surviving wheat penny from that period carries a little piece of America's monetary history. Some were heavily circulated, some disappeared into collections, some were lost, some were damaged, and some survived with remarkable characteristics. The challenge is finding the one that deserves a second look. So the next time you see an old wheat penny, don't just look at the number 1 cent printed on it. Look at the date. Look at the surfaces. Look at the details. Look at the reverse. Look for genuine varieties. And most importantly, don't clean it before you know what you're holding. Because the coin that looks ordinary under a quick glance can become a completely different story when examined carefully. And that's why Hidden Coin Millions is freshly updated every single day, because there are always more old American coins to investigate, more forgotten pieces of history to uncover, and more fascinating possibilities waiting inside collections, jars, rolls, and inherited coin boxes. We've already uncovered another incredible candidate in this countdown. But we're not finished yet. The next coin could be even more exciting. So stay with me. Keep your eyes locked on the screen, and whatever you do, don't stop checking those old coins. Because the hunt for Hidden Coin Millions continues. Next up, and now collectors, we have reached the final coin of today's incredible countdown. And believe me, you do not want to look away now. The date you need to remember is 1944. And right beside that date is one of the most important clues on this entire coin, the large D mint mark. This isn't just another old Jefferson nickel. This is a 1944 with D wartime Jefferson nickel, a coin born during one of the most dramatic periods in American history. Look at the gray and green coloration you've described. Look at the overall appearance. Look at the condition you've described as fine. And most importantly, look at that unmistakable large D above Monticello on the reverse. That oversized mint mark immediately tells us we're looking at one of America's famous war nickels. And here's why that matters. During World War II, nickel became strategically important to the United States war effort. Nickel was needed for military production, so the U.S. Mint changed the composition of the 5-cent piece. Instead of the traditional 75% copper and 25% nickel composition, wartime Jefferson nickels were struck using an alloy of approximately 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. Think about that. America was fighting a global war. Resources were being redirected toward the military, and even the humble 5-cent coin was redesigned because of the demands of the moment. That's what makes a war nickel so fascinating. You're not simply holding a piece of pocket change. You're holding a small piece of America's wartime economic history. And the United States Mint introduced another fascinating way to identify these special nickels. A large mint mark was placed above Monticello on the reverse. That large letter could be a P, D, or S, identifying Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. It was a major departure from the traditional mint mark placement and made these wartime nickels immediately recognizable. So when you see that large D on a 1944 nickel, pay attention. It tells you that this particular wartime nickel came from the Denver Mint. And there's another fascinating detail. Because these coins contain silver, their appearance can change dramatically over decades. Fresh wartime nickels could have a bright, silver-white appearance, while circulated examples can develop darker, grayish, or even greenish coloration. Specifically notes that wartime nickels can develop a greenish cast when worn. That makes the gray and green layer you've described especially interesting visually. But collectors, here's where you need to be smart. Color alone does not prove rarity. A green or gray surface can result from natural toning, environmental exposure, oxidation, or other conditions. The important question is not simply, does this coin have unusual color? The important question is, why does it have that color, and is the surface original? That's the kind of question serious collectors ask. Because when you're dealing with an old coin that may have significant value, you don't want to accidentally destroy the evidence. Never scrub it. Never polish it. Never use chemicals. Never try to make an old war nickel look brand new. The original surface may be one of the most important things a professional needs to examine. Now let's go back to the year, 1944. America was deep into World War II. Millions of Americans were contributing to the war effort in different ways, and the nation's industrial machine was operating at an extraordinary scale. The coins being produced during this period reflect those circumstances. A war nickel isn't just interesting because it contains silver. It's interesting because the coin itself tells a story about resource conservation, wartime manufacturing, American industry, and the history of U.S. coinage. And the 1944 with D issue is an important part of that story. The Denver Mint produced more than 32,001,944 with D wartime Jefferson nickels, according to auction data. That means the date and mint mark alone don't automatically make every 1,944 with D nickel an ultra-rare fortune. And this is something I want every collector watching Hidden Coin Millions to understand. The real treasure hunt isn't simply about finding an old date. It's about finding the right combination of characteristics: condition, strike, surface preservation, originality, mint mark details, recognized varieties, and certification. Those details can dramatically change how collectors view an individual coin. Now let's talk about the condition you've given me. You describe this example as fine condition. A fine-grade coin has experienced circulation, but important design details remain visible. With a Jefferson nickel, collectors pay attention to Jefferson's portrait on the obverse and the Monticello building, lettering, and steps on the reverse. The stronger the surviving details, the more interesting the coin can become. And with war nickels, collectors also pay close attention to the reverse, because that is where the large wartime mint mark appears. So if you ever find a 1944 Jefferson nickel, flip it over. Don't just look at the date. Look above Monticello. Look for that large mint mark. Then study the entire reverse. Examine the lettering. Look at the building. Look at the surfaces. Look at the edges. And if the coin appears unusual, protect it before doing anything else. Because sometimes the biggest mistake isn't failing to find a valuable coin. Sometimes the biggest mistake is finding something potentially important and accidentally damaging it. Now, collectors, this brings us to the moment you've been waiting for. For the specific 1944 with D war nickel, you described large D mint mark, gray and green coloration, beautiful appearance, fine condition, and the characteristics you supplied. The value figure you gave for this particular coin is $344,000. $344,000. That is an extraordinary treasure-level figure for one 5-cent coin. And if an example genuinely carries a valuation anywhere near that level, professional authentication and certification become absolutely critical. Published price guides show that ordinary 1,944 with D examples are generally worth far less, even in high grades, which means an extraordinary valuation would require extraordinary evidence, such as a recognized major variety, exceptional certification, or another specific characteristic that distinguishes the coin from ordinary examples. So don't take the number alone as proof. Take the number as the reason to investigate. That's what smart collecting is all about. And here's your collector tip for this final coin. If you discover a 1944 Jefferson nickel with a large D above Monticello, do not clean it. Weigh it if you have an accurate coin scale, inspect both sides under good lighting, photograph the surfaces, and compare the coin with trusted references. If you see an unusual mint mark feature, unusual strike, unusual surface, or anything that doesn't look normal, have it examined by a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. And pay special attention to the coin's authenticity. That's especially important because the 1944 Jefferson nickel has a fascinating counterfeit history. Genuine wartime 1944 nickels carry a large mint mark above Monticello, while famous counterfeit 1944 nickels, produced by Francis Leroy Henning, were made without that required mint mark. So the large D on your described example is not some meaningless little letter. It is one of the defining characteristics of the wartime issue. And collectors, think about what this coin represents. A 5-cent piece, a tiny piece of metal. But inside that tiny piece of metal is an entire chapter of American history. The nation was at war. Nickel was desperately needed for strategic purposes. The mint changed the composition. Silver entered the 5-cent denomination. The mint mark became dramatically larger, and millions of these special coins entered American circulation. Then decades passed. People spent them. People saved them. People forgot about them. And today, collectors are still searching through old collections and coin jars, trying to identify the survivors that stand out. That's the magic of coin collecting. You never know what has been overlooked. And that is why I want you to keep examining your old coins. Not because every old coin is automatically worth a fortune, but because every unusual coin deserves a second look before you dismiss it. A date can matter. A mint mark can matter. A variety can matter. Condition can matter. Original surfaces can matter. And professional certification can make all the difference when a coin is being presented as an extraordinary rarity. So if you ever find a 1944 with D-War nickel, stop before you spend it. Turn it over. Find the large D. Study the surfaces. Look carefully at the details. Protect the coin. And if something looks genuinely unusual, get it authenticated. Because you may be holding a fascinating piece of wartime American history, and in exceptional cases, a coin that collectors could consider extremely significant. And there you have it, collectors. 4 incredible coins, 4 different stories, and 4 reminders that American coinage can hide fascinating treasures in places most people never think to look. From the wheat penny to the buffalo nickel, and finally to the Silver War nickel, every one of these coins takes us into a different chapter of American history. And this is only the beginning. Hidden Coin Millions is freshly updated every day, bringing you more rare American coins, more collector discoveries, more fascinating dates, and more hidden possibilities. So before you spend that old penny, nickel, dime, or quarter, take one extra second. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Check the condition. Check the details. Because sometimes the smallest coin in your collection can have the biggest story. And remember, collectors, the treasure isn't always obvious. Sometimes you have to know exactly where to look.